A follow-up to yesterday's video. Here we go.
51. Antarctica is by far the coldest place on Earth, with an average annual temperature of approximately minus 57 degrees Fahrenheit and a record low of minus 135.8. The average annual temperature at the North Pole, however, is a comparatively warm 4 degrees. Throughout the year, temperatures in the Antarctic vary less than half the amount at comparable Arctic latitudes. The northern Arctic region enjoys moderately warm summers and manageable winters, whereas the southern Antarctic region never even warms enough to melt the perpetual snow and ice. On a tilting, wobbling ball Earth spinning uniformly around the sun, Arctic and Antarctic temperatures and seasons should not vary so greatly. 52. Iceland, at 65 degrees north latitude, is home to 870 species of native plants and abundant various animal life. Compare this with the Isle of Georgia at just 54 degrees south latitude, where there are only 18 species of native plants and animal life is almost non-existent. The same latitude as Canada or England in the north, where dense forests of various tall trees abound, the infamous Captain Cook wrote of Georgia that he was unable to find a single shrub large enough to make a toothpick. Cook wrote, "Not a tree was to be seen. The lands which lie to the south are doomed by nature to perpetual frigidness, never to feel the warmth of the sun's rays, whose horrible and savage aspect I have not words to describe. Even marine life is sparse in certain tracts of vast extent, and the seabird is seldom observed flying over such lonely wastes. The contrasts between the limits of organic life in the Arctic and Antarctic zones is very remarkable and significant." 53. At places of comparable latitude, north and south, the sun behaves very differently than it would on a spinning ball Earth, but precisely how it should on a flat Earth. For example, the longest summer days north of the equator are much longer than those south of the equator, and the shortest winter days north of the equator are much shorter than the shortest south of the equator. This is inexplicable on a uniformly spinning, wobbling ball Earth, but fits exactly on a flat model with the sun traveling circles over and around the Earth from tropic to tropic. 54.
Let's put the sun on this diagram. Now let's show night and day. Exactly how does light get from here to stop here, and travel another totally different distance to stop over here?
At places of comparable latitude north and south, dawn and dusk happen very differently than they would on a spinning ball, but precisely how they should on a flat Earth. In the north, dawn and dusk come slowly and last far longer than in the south, where they come and go very quickly. Certain places in the north, twilight can last for over an hour, while at comparable southern latitudes, within a few minutes the sunlight completely disappears. This is inexplicable on a uniformly spinning, wobbling ball Earth, but is exactly what is expected on a flat Earth with the sun traveling faster, wider circles over the south and slower, narrower circles over the north. 55. If the sun circles over and around the Earth every 24 hours, steadily traveling from tropic to tropic every 6 months, it follows that the northern central region would annually receive far more heat and sunlight than the southern circumferential region. Since the sun must sweep over the larger southern region in the same 24 hours it has to pass over the smaller northern region, its passage must necessarily be proportionally faster as well. This perfectly explains the differences in Arctic and Antarctic temperatures, seasons, length of daylight, plant and animal life. This is why the Antarctic morning dawn and evening twilight are very abrupt compared to the north, and this explains why many midsummer Arctic nights the sun does not set at all. 56. The midnight sun is an Arctic phenomenon occurring annually during the summer solstice, where for several days straight, an observer significantly far enough north can watch the sun traveling circles overhead, rising and falling in the sky throughout the day, but never fully setting for upwards of 72 plus hours. If the Earth were actually a spinning globe revolving around the sun, the only place such a phenomenon as the midnight sun could be observed would be at the poles. Any other vantage point from 89 degrees latitude downwards could never, regardless of any tilt or inclination, see the sun for 24 hours straight. To see the sun for an entire revolution on a spinning globe at a point other than the poles, you would have to be looking through miles and miles of land and sea for part of the revolution.
Midnight sun is a phenomenon where the sun remains visible at midnight. This phenomenon occurs in the summer months north of Arctic Circle, and south of the Antarctic Circle. The apparent motion of the sun in both polar regions is different. In the North Polar region, the Sun moves from left to right. On the other hand, in Antarctica, the Sun moves from right to left. There is no explanation other than that Earth is a sphere. The flat Earth model can explain the occurrence of the northern midnight sun. But it fails to explain that the identical phenomenon also occurs in the southern polar region, but moves to the opposite direction.
57. The establishment claims the midnight sun is experienced in Antarctica, but they conveniently do not have any uncut videos showing this, nor do they allow independent explorers to travel to Antarctica during the winter solstice to verify or refute these claims. Conversely, there are dozens of uncut videos publicly available showing the Arctic midnight sun, and it has been verified beyond any shadow of a doubt.
This statement is patently false. From Anthony Powell. Credits to Anthony Powell for this video. Got it now, Flat Earthers.
58. The Royal Belgian Geographical Society in their Expedition Antarctique Belge recorded that during the most severe part of the Antarctic winter, from 71 degrees south latitude onwards, the sun sets on May 17th and is not seen above the horizon again until July 21st. This is completely at odds with the ball Earth theory, but easily explained by the flat Earth model. The midnight sun is seen from high altitudes in extreme northern latitudes during Arctic summer because the sun, at its innermost cycle, is circling tightly enough around the polar center that it remains visible above the horizon for someone at such a vantage point. Likewise, in extreme southern latitudes during Arctic summer, the sun completely disappears from view for over 2 months because there, at the northern tropic, the innermost arc of its boomerang journey, the sun is circling the northern center too tightly to be seen from the southern circumference. 59. Quoting Gabrielle Henriette, the theory of the rotation of the Earth may once and for all be definitely disposed of as impracticable by pointing out the following inadvertence. It is said that the rotation takes 24 hours and that its speed is uniform, in which case, necessarily, days and nights should have an identical duration of 12 hours each all the year round. The sun should invariably rise in the morning and set in the evening at the same hours, with the result that it would be the equinox every day from the 1st of January to the 31st of December. One should stop and reflect on this before saying that the Earth has a movement of rotation. How does the system of gravitation account for the seasonal variations in the length of days and nights if the Earth rotates at a uniform speed in 24 hours? 60. Anyone can prove the sea horizon perfectly straight and the Earth perfectly flat using nothing more than a level, tripods, and a wooden plank. At any altitude above sea level, simply fix a 6 to 12 foot long smooth leveled board edgewise upon tripods and observe the skyline from eye level behind it. The distant horizon will always appear perfectly level with the upper edge of the board. Furthermore, if you move in a half circle from one end of the board to the other, whilst observing the skyline over the upper edge, you'll be able to trace a clear, flat 10 to 20 miles depending on your altitude. This would be impossible if the Earth were a globe 25,000 miles in circumference. The horizon would align over the center of the board, then gradually, noticeably decline towards the extremities. Just 10 miles on each side would necessitate an easily visible curvature of 66.6 feet from each end to the center. 61. If the Earth were actually a big ball 25,000 miles in circumference, the horizon would be noticeably curved even at sea level, and everything on or approaching the horizon would appear to tilt backwards slightly from your perspective. Distant buildings along the horizon would all look like leaning towers of Pisa falling away from the observer. A hot air balloon taking off, then drifting steadily away from you on a ball Earth would slowly and constantly appear to lean back more and more the farther away it flew, the bottom of the basket coming gradually into view as the top of the balloon disappears from sight. In reality, however, buildings, balloons, trees, people, anything and everything at right angles to the ground and horizon remain so regardless the distance or height of the observer. 62. Samuel Rowbotham's experiments at the Old Bedford level proved conclusively the canal's water to be completely flat over a 6-mile stretch. First, he stood in the canal with his telescope held 8 inches above the surface of the water. Then his friend in a boat with a 5-foot-tall flag sailed the 6 miles away. If Earth were a ball 25,000 miles in circumference, the 6-mile stretch of water should have comprised an arc exactly 6 feet high in the middle, so the entire boat and flag should have ultimately disappeared, when in fact the entire boat and flag remained visible at the same height for the entire journey. 63. In a second experiment, Dr. Rowbotham affixed flags 5 feet high along the shoreline, one at every mile marker. Then, using his telescope mounted at 5 feet, just behind the first flag, looked over the tops of all 6 flags, which lined up in a perfectly straight line. If the Earth were a ball 25,000 miles in circumference, the flags should have progressively dipped down after the first establishing line of sight. The second would have descended 8 inches, 32 inches for the third, 6 feet for the fourth, 10 feet 8 inches for the fifth, and 16 feet 8 inches for the sixth. 64. Quoting Earth Not a Globe by Samuel Rowbotham, "It is known that the horizon at sea, whatever distance it may extend to the right and left of the observer on land, always appears as a straight line. The following experiment has been tried in various parts of the country. At Brighton, on a rising ground near the race course, 2 poles were affixed in the earth 6 yards apart. 65. Also quoting Dr. Rowbotham, "On a shore near Waterloo, a few miles to the north of Liverpool, a good telescope was fixed at an elevation of 6 feet above the water. It was directed to a large steamer just leaving the River Mersey and sailing out to Dublin. Gradually, the masthead of the receding vessel came nearer to the horizon, until, at length, after more than 4 hours had elapsed, it disappeared. The ordinary rate of sailing of the Dublin steamers was fully 8 miles an hour, so that the vessel would be at least 32 miles distant when the masthead came to the horizon. The 6 feet elevation of the telescope would require 3 miles to be deducted from everything, which would leave 29 miles, the square of which multiplied by 8 inches gives 560 feet, deducting 8 feet for the height of the main mast, and we found that, according to the document of the masthead of the outward bound steamer should have been 480 feet below the horizon. Many other experiments of this kind have been made on sea-going steamers, and always would result entirely incompatible with the theory of the Earth as a globe. 66. Dr. Rowbotham conducted several other experiments using telescopes, spirit levels, sextants, and theodolites, special precision instruments used for measuring angles in horizontal or vertical planes. By positioning them at equal heights, aimed at each other successively, he proved over and over the Earth to be perfectly flat for miles without a single inch of curvature. His findings caused quite a stir in the scientific community, and thanks to 30 years of his efforts, the shape of the Earth became a hot topic of debate around the turn of the 19th century. 67. The distance across the Irish Sea from the Isle of Man's Douglas Harbour to Great Orme's Head in North Wales is 60 miles. If the Earth was a globe, then the surface of the water between them would form a 60-mile arc, the center towering 1,944 feet higher than the coastlines at either end. It is well known and easily verifiable, however, that on a clear day from a modest altitude of 100 feet, the Great Orme's Head is visible from Douglas Harbour. This would be completely impossible on a globe of 25,000 miles. Assuming the 100-foot altitude causes the horizon to appear approximately 13 miles off, 47 miles remaining means the Welsh coastline should still fall an impossible 1,472 feet below the line of sight. 68. The Philadelphia skyline is clearly visible from Apple Pie Hill in the New Jersey Pine Barrens 40 miles away. If Earth were a ball 25,000 miles in circumference, factoring in Genoa, on bright clear days, the island of Elba can be seen an incredible 125 miles away. If Earth were a ball 25,000 miles in circumference, Elba should be forever invisible behind 8,770 feet of curvature. 78. From Anchorage, Alaska, at an elevation of 102 feet, on clear days, Mount Foraker can be seen with the naked eye 120 miles away. If Earth were a ball 25,000 miles in circumference, Mount Foraker's 17,400-foot summit should be leaning back away from the observer, covered by 7,719 feet of curved Earth. In reality, however, the entire mountain can be quite easily seen standing straight from base to summit. 79. From Anchorage, Alaska, at an elevation of 102 feet, on clear days, Mount McKinley can be seen with the naked eye from 130 miles away. If Earth were a ball 25,000 miles in circumference, Mount McKinley's 20,320-foot summit should be leaning back away from the observer and almost half covered by 9,220 feet of curved Earth. In reality, however, the entire mountain can be quite easily seen standing straight from base to summit. 80. In Chambers' Journal, February 1895, a sailor near Mauritius in the Indian Ocean reported having seen a vessel which turned out to be an incredible 200 miles away. The incident caused much heated debate in nautical circles at the time, gaining further confirmation in Aden, Yemen, where another witness reported seeing a missing Bombay steamer from 200 miles away. He correctly stated the precise appearance, location, and direction of the steamer.
This is a tale. It is impossible to identify a ship from 200 miles away, even using today's technology. And it is impossible to ascertain the distance is 200 miles.
All later corroborated and confirmed correct by those on board. Such sightings are absolutely inexplicable if the Earth were actually a ball 25,000 miles around, as ships 200 miles distant would have to fall approximately 5 miles below line of sight. 81. The distance from which various lighthouse lights around the world are visible at sea far exceeds what could be found on a ball Earth 25,000 miles in circumference. For example, the Dunkirk light in southern France, at an altitude of 194 feet, is visible from a boat 10 feet above sea level, 28 miles away. Spherical trigonometry dictates that if the Earth was a globe with the given curvature of 8 inches per mile squared, this light should be hidden 190 feet below the horizon. 82. The Port Nicholson light in New Zealand is 420 feet above sea level and visible from 35 miles away, where it should be 220 feet below the horizon. 83. The Icaro light in Norway is 154 feet above high water and visible from 28 statute miles, where it should be 230 feet below the horizon. 84. The light at Madras on the Esplanade is 132 feet high and visible from 28 miles away, where it should be 250 feet below the line of sight. 85. The Cordonan light on the feet. 94. From the highland near Portsmouth Harbour in Hampshire, England, looking across Spithead to the Isle of Wight, the entire base of the island, where water and land come together, composes a perfectly straight line 22 statute miles long. According to the ball Earth theory, the Isle of Wight should decline 80 feet from the center on each side to account for the necessary curvature. The crosshairs of a good theodolite directed there, however, have repeatedly shown the land and water line to be perfectly level. 95. On a clear day from the High Head near Douglas Harbour on the Isle of Man, the whole length of the coast of North Wales is often plainly visible to the naked eye. From the Point of Ayr at the mouth of the River Dee to Holyhead comprises a 50-mile stretch which has also been repeatedly found to be perfectly horizontal. If the Earth actually had curvature of 8 inches per mile squared, as NASA and modern astronomy claim, the 50-mile length of Welsh coast seen along the horizon in Liverpool Bay would have to decline from the center point an easily detectable 416 feet on each side. 96. From 100 Proofs the Earth is Not a Globe by William Carpenter. If we take a journey down Chesapeake Bay by night, we shall see the light exhibited at Sharp's Island for an hour before the steamer gets to it. We may take up a position on deck so that the rail of the vessel's side will be in a line with the light and in the line of sight, and we shall find that in the whole journey the light won't vary in the slightest degree in its apparent elevation. Let's say that a distance of 13 miles has been traversed. The astronomer's theory of curvature demands a difference, one way or the other, in the apparent elevation of the light of 112 feet 8 inches. Since, however, there is not a difference of 100 hairs' breadths, we have a plain proof that the water of the Chesapeake Bay is not curved, which is a proof that the Earth is not a globe. 97. NASA and modern astronomy say the Earth is a giant ball tilted back, wobbling and spinning 1,000 miles per hour around its central axis, traveling 67,000 miles per hour circles around the Sun, spiraling 500,000 miles per hour around the Milky Way, while the entire galaxy rockets a ridiculous 670 million miles through the universe, with all of these motions originating from an alleged Big Bang cosmogenic explosion 14 billion years ago. That's a grand total of 67,568,000 miles per hour in several different directions we're all supposedly speeding along at simultaneously, yet no one has ever seen, felt, heard, measured, or proven a single one of these motions to exist whatsoever. 98. NASA and modern astronomy say Polaris, the North Pole star, is somewhere between 323 and 434 light-years, or about 2 quadrillion miles away from us. Firstly, note that is between 1,938 trillion to 2,604 trillion miles, making a difference of over 600 trillion miles. If modern astronomy cannot even agree on the distance to stars within hundreds of trillions of miles, perhaps their science is flawed and their theory needs re-examining. However, even granting them their obscurely distant stars, it is impossible for heliocentrists to explain how Polaris manages to always remain perfectly aligned straight above the North Pole throughout Earth's various alleged tilting, wobbling, rotating, and revolving motions. 99. Viewed from a ball Earth, Polaris, situated directly over the North Pole, should not be visible anywhere in the southern hemisphere. For Polaris to be seen from the southern hemisphere of a globular Earth, the observer would have to be somehow looking through the globe, and miles of land and sea would have to be transparent. Polaris can be seen, however, up to over 20 degrees south latitude. 100. If Earth were a ball, the Southern Cross and other southern constellations would all be visible at the same time from every longitude on the same latitude, as is the case in the north with Polaris and its surrounding constellations. Ursa Major and Minor and many others can be seen from every northern meridian simultaneously, whereas in the south, constellations like the Southern Cross cannot. This proves that the southern hemisphere is not turned under as in the ball model, but simply stretching further outwards away from the northern center point as in the flat Earth model.
All the mentioned constellations are circumpolar only if the observer is at a latitude close enough to the pole. The crux is circumpolar if the observer is located at -33 degrees or more to the south. Only people in southern ends of Australia, New Zealand, southern parts of Chile and Argentina, and the southern tip of South Africa can see crux all night, every night. I deliberately didn't answer some proofs, because they result in the same rebuttal. And what's the reason to continuously waste your time giving the same rebuttal to their fallacious reasoning? Thank you for watching, and tomorrow, 152 proofs will be debunked tomorrow. 100 proofs are left undebunked by us. Next up, after the 200 proofs, we'll debunk Eric Dubay's video on how sunsets work.